Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Films and Stuff podcast. I am ever-present Ethan, sitting alongside the MVP of this podcast, most valuable Pete. Hey, Pete, what's up today?
Not much, buddy. How are you?
Everything is great because it is another week, another stream or skip episode. I know the rules. You know the rules for the newly initiated or the soon-to-be newly initiated. Can you do it in, as always, I think like 20 seconds or less, a quick explanation of this?
I'll give it a shot. So Ethan and I have prepared lists of TV shows and movies for each other to watch. We watch at least 2 episodes if it's a TV series or 30 minutes if it's a feature-length program. And on that basis, we determine if that show is worthy of being streamed or skipped.
Hence the name of the segment, Stream or Skip. I'm going to go first, if you don't mind, only
Please
because
do.
I think I've got the shorter, less to talk about series. You have assigned me on Apple TV Plus, which is usually a good sign, a show called Criminal Record. It is 10 episodes, season 1, released earlier in 2024, stars, to be honest, folks that I was not very familiar with, but extraordinarily capable and compelling. Usually what we see shows that have these big global plots, right? There's a nuclear bomb that's going to destroy the world. There's this terrorist on the loose. There's some type of nefarious scheme to destroy everything, right? They're big plots. And we see them on a global scale, and the stakes are very high. This goes much more local. So local, in fact, that we're talking about a single murder in a London neighborhood. And it's primarily focused on the London police force, where, to summarize, there was a murder long back, and the arresting officer or detective, put the killer into prison. And now there is a similar murder, and a new detective on the force thinks that this murder is so similar to the prior one that the person who was put in jail was wrongly convicted and the actual murderer is still on the loose. There is some friction between the two detective inspectors. The longer tenured gentleman seems to honestly believe that he has put the correct perpetrator in prison, and certainly is trying to cover himself a little bit and make sure that his case is not reopened and reexamined. And there seems to be some loose ends there that he's trying to hide or protect. And the newer detective inspector, who has gone on a crusade to try to prove that the person who's previously been convicted was wrongly convicted, maybe get them released, and at the same time try to find the perpetrator that she believes is responsible for both of these murders. So this is a very, very local case, right? Everything is taking place within, kind of London, as it were. A lot of talking to the neighbors, a lot of talking to, the community. It is, let me say, without question, very, very well done. There is good intrigue, a very clear plot as well. And there's, of course, some minor twists and turns. But generally, you should have to like the British kind of like investigative genre, because it is, I don't want to say the stakes are small. The stakes are high, right? I mean, there's 2 victims of a murder. There is someone who is in prison for a murder. So the stakes in that sense are high in real life. But compared to some of the other things, where there's a nuclear bomb that's going to go off, or this, worldwide plot, the stakes are comparatively relatively low. You have to really, I guess, enjoy the idea that at the end, all we're trying to do is either confirm a murderer or absolve the murderer. And I found myself, and I don't mean this like because I'm a cold, distant, black-hearted person, not really caring about the stakes.
Right.
We meet the person who's in jail for the murder. They actually kind of confess to it, and we're led to believe, did they confess to it to kind of like protect someone, or, do they have mental illness and they were, kind of coerced into it? Or does all the evidence just kind of like point to them actually just doing it? And that's the way that it is. We're trying to find a reason to be sympathetic of someone who just killed someone, right? So I found myself not really caring, that I didn't really feel like, oh, this guy is such a great guy who's, sitting in prison. He was a wonderful father and a wonderful husband, and like, we've got to get him out. He was wrongly convicted. I didn't really feel any sympathy towards him because it's a very balanced story, which is, I think, one of the benefits of the show. They've really balanced it and saying, well, it's undisputed that he did these bad things, but just because he did these bad things doesn't mean that he did this one worse thing, right? And I know that's a slippery slope, but I felt myself not really having like a lot of sympathy for the guy. And again, I felt like the London police force was spending an awful lot of drama looking back on a very, very old case and trying to find out, did he or didn't he, rather than kind of focusing on all the crime that's currently happening on the streets, right?
Right.
Which doesn't mean, again, if someone's falsely imprisoned, I can't think of many worse hells in this world, right?
Right.
To be incarcerated for a crime you didn't commit has got to be awful. Putting that to the side, these are like London detective inspectors, right? Like, there's a lot of crime going on. And I kind of felt like, guys, would you just like get on with your life and like start solving some other crimes and making the streets safe and like doing your job, rather than going through all this like spy drama and, following this person and checking in this person, interviewing this person. Like, they're ruining their family relationships, like their spouses are like, where are you? Their kids are like, where are you? They're always like grumpy. They're snapping at people. It's meant to show like the stress that the job brings and how it like kind of like impacts your personal life. And we've seen this with a lot of shows, that it's supposed to be a show about one thing, but then the husband gets dragged in, the kids get dragged in, and suddenly it becomes like a family drama, right?
Yeah.
We kind of saw that a little bit with like Lioness, remember?
Yeah.
Where the daughter started acting out. The husband was like a little bit unhappy. His wife was never there. I felt like this was kind of going down the same path, where I was seeing a lot of family drama. And again, you just kind of want to take characters and shake them and say, look, you have a husband, you have a child. You should really prioritize them. What you're doing is very admirable, that you're trying to, find out whether this guy who's in prison is falsely imprisoned and trying to get him out. But you've got two other people in your life to take care of, right? And I think that I'm not a spouse, but if I were a spouse and I am a son, but if that were the case and my father, my partner were kind of like neglecting me because they're just so fixated on this old case, I think it would start to resent them a little bit for that. And that kind of creeps into the show as well. So let me step back from the psychology of the show and say, very, very well done. Not super compelling for me to watch episode after episode after episode. I watched a few. I like it. But again, the stakes were not high enough for me to get really invested in what is very localized British crime drama. So I've given this a skip, not without more than a little bit of hand wringing, just because it's so well done. But again, the entire plot and storyline just don't give me enough juice, right? They say, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. It's just not enough juice for me to watch this versus some of the other stuff that I've got on my list.
Okay. Fair enough. I mean, I had higher hopes given that it's an Apple TV program.
That is Criminal Record, Apple TV Plus.
Okay, shifting gears, but not far away. My show, Baby
Oh yeah, another
Reindeer,
British.
on
Yeah.
Netflix, also based in London.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where it gets a bit tough.
Oh yeah.
So it's let's talk about the premise first.
Yes. Can I just say one thing before you start? I don't know if this is a social media phenomenon, but I have heard a lot about Baby Reindeer.
Yeah,
Maybe not a lot, but I've definitely seen the name many times.
yeah.
And I have to say, I absolutely, before watching the show, and I did watch 2 episodes or 1.5, I could not have said any single thing about what the show is about. I didn't know if it was a reality show. I didn't know if it was a slasher. I didn't know if it was a comedy. I had zero idea what this was, but I have seen the name Baby Reindeer pop up many places.
Yeah. So I guess let's start with that. So the show is a biopic, but it's a fictionalized biopic. So
Okay.
people's names have been changed, locations have been changed, etc. And the reason is because it's based on a true story, but some things obviously have been
Oh,
changed.
really? Okay.
And the reason they've done that is because of what I would expect is the premise. And the premise is that this is about this guy who lives in London. He's moved to London and he's an aspiring comedian. So he's trying to be like a stand-up comic and he's got his own shtick. It's not working for him, but he's still trying. While he's trying to be this comic, he's got this really low life. By low life, I mean, he's not excelling as a comedian. He's living with his ex-girlfriend's mother as a tenant, so things aren't exactly super fantastic for him.
Okay.
And he's working at a pub to make ends meet. And while there, he meets a woman who comes in who's very distraught. And he takes pity on her and in doing so kind of befriends her, but doesn't exactly. And the reason is because she starts stalking him.
Mm.
And she forms this one-sided relationship in her mind with this guy. And, like she thinks that, they're in love. She thinks that he's into her and that they're dating and this and that. And so she
Right.
starts following him around. So she follows him to the comedy club. And because she's there and because he's able to kind of interact with her, or because he has to kind of interact with her, all of a sudden, through circumstances, his career starts taking off.
Oh,
But it's not because he likes her. It's just because like he's trying to play it off as like, look, we're nothing. Like you and I aren't anything like that. But she doesn't see that or doesn't accept that. He starts dating someone else, and she gets aggressive about it. She assaults him sexually. You know,
whoa.
it's a really hard show to watch because it's super creepy. And then you watch it under the lens that this was based on a true story. And you're just like, oh man, like this can't be good. Like these are all the nightmares that I imagine that like a young woman or even just a woman in general has. I imagine that's exactly what this guy was going through. So it's just this like
Is it a
super,
comedy? Is it funny or it's
it's
like very
not,
dark?
it's dark. It's
Oh,
just dark. I would not classify this as a comedy at all. That's why I call this more of a biopic than anything else. It's a drama second.
yeah.
Comedy, I don't think is even at all on this list.
Oh,
And it's just it made me feel kind of gross and dirty after watching it. And spoiler alert, I finished the whole series.
okay.
Only 7 episodes. It's a mini series. I doubt very much they're going to do more. And
Oh,
then, so you learn more about this woman who's stalking this guy. Then you also learn more about this guy and his background. And, he didn't encourage the stalking, but he didn't do much to dissuade it either because he also has a lot of personal issues in his life. And then we learned that he was assaulted years in the past, and he never gave up his accuser to the police. And because of that, he feels like it would be wrong to give up this woman to the police.
Hmm.
It's just a bunch of mental gymnastics as to why he hasn't
Yeah.
gone to the police and this and that. It's just kind of gross. Anyway, so that's the premise. The reason the show became, I think, famous on social media is two things. One, it's based on a true story.
It's got a
Two,
great title.
so yeah, okay, so let me talk about the title before I get into the
Yeah.
second reason. So the title is called Baby Reindeer, and it's because
Mhm.
she calls him her reindeer, a small creature she can kind of take care of.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
It's a pet name.
kind of like a pet name, literally,
Yeah.
for this guy.
Right.
And the second reason this show became famous is because in real life, the woman who this show is purportedly based on came forward.
Oh, really?
She went on to Piers Morgan and said
No
that this is
way.
all total BS. None of this happened. You guys can't prove it. None of this is true. This is all more fiction than it is true story, because
Oh,
when you first start the show, the very first words are based on a true story. But then at the end of the episodes, it says, some things have been fictionalized. So she went on to Piers Morgan to debunk all of this. And then she sued Netflix for $170 million.
okay.
And she kind of became infamous.
Did they use her real name though?
No, that's the thing, is they changed all the names, they changed locations, all of that stuff. But the internet being the internet, and this woman being this woman, because apparently she is known for having stalked people, she did go after, apparently, the current Prime Minister of the UK. So she is a known figure. Internet sleuths kind of figured out it was this woman.
Oh my
And
gosh.
they called her out, and that's why she kind of had to go out in public and defend herself. And that's probably why you heard so much about it on social media.
What happened with the lawsuit?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. Because this is still relatively recent, right? We're talking like a month ago, a month and a half ago for the show.
Wow, it's so interesting. If you just Google it, it's fantastic.
Yeah, you'll hear so much and you'll see a lot of nonsense. So, I mean, I'm in India, and like Indian newspapers were reporting about it.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by this worldwide attention on social media. It made a lot of news for all the wrong reasons. And this poor woman, I mean, like, I don't know how much of this is true or not true, but regardless, like, all these allegations were made and her
I am
name
going
was
down
uncovered.
this rabbit hole today for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. There's nothing more that I love than a good lawsuit based on the entertainment industry.
Yeah. Going back to the show, it's hard to score it because on one hand, it's compelling to watch, right? Because it's kind of like seeing a car crash on the side of the highway when you're driving, right? You rubberneck because you kind of want to slow down and see what's happening. So like half of you is kind of like, oh my God, this is so terrible, but I have to keep watching it. But the other half of it is, man, it's kind of gross what's happening, right? Like to be stalked, to have the things happen to him that happened in this show, to be assaulted, all that kind of stuff. It's just kind of like blood-curdlingly cold. I didn't like it. So I went with the straight down the middle average mooch because I couldn't stop myself from watching it. That makes it a must subscribe. But at the same time, as I was watching it, I felt kind of gross about it. And that makes it a skip.
So I did not know a lot of this context. And I think I missed it at the beginning where it said based on a true story, or I just subconsciously didn't think about it. I gave this a mooch as well. But I only watched, I think, episode and a half, 2 episodes. So I didn't watch the whole season. So maybe I didn't get into the grossest part. I got into the more stalking setup. But I agree with you. It does have that possibility. One thing I wanted to raise, though, was I said that I loved, this is going to go into a tangent, sorry, that I loved, like entertainment-based lawsuits. I didn't know about this, but you know which one I've recently went down a rabbit hole on?
Which is?
Alec Baldwin and Rust.
Oh my God, this has been an ongoing thing. As at the time of recording, it just concluded this morning.
What happened?
The lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice.
How much have you read and what's your feeling about this?
I haven't
First of
read
all,
that
horrific that someone died in this. It's absolutely inexcusable to me, right? It's crazy.
Let's give some premise since you've been the most caught up on this. Why don't you start off with some of the premise?
So Rust was a kind of a Western movie. It starred Alec Baldwin, and I guess it was kind of Alec Baldwin's passion project. It was being filmed somewhere in New Mexico. Let's just state the fact and then we'll put some context around it. During a shooting, not when they were actually filming, but kind of like in the prep for that scene, someone was accidentally shot by Alec Baldwin and the weapon that he was going to use in the upcoming scene. And that lady tragically died. She was shot in the chest. And the original story that I heard, and I guess I read some context to it, was Alec Baldwin was basically like standing in front of like, you know, the director and this lady and some other people saying, okay, so put the camera here because when I draw my weapon, I'm going to go like this, bang, right? And he says he never pulled the trigger. We'll get to that later. But when he unholstered the gun and kind of like held it up like how he was going to do it, the gun discharged and apparently it had a live bullet in it.
Oh my God.
And it hit at kind of like point blank. This lady, I think she was, I'm going to get this wrong. I think she was like costume designer or lighting or something. You know, she wasn't like a director, first director, and she wasn't in charge of props, but she got hit point blank, kind of like in the chest, died, and the bullet actually passed through her and then hit like another dude in the shoulder.
Oh,
so she died. When I heard the whole story, I was just like, this is like the craziest thing I've ever heard. Like, how did someone actually get shot? Like,
why use a live bullet?
Yes. So here's where things get super crazy. And there's a lot of he said, she said, or he said, he said. So first of all, by most accounts, this was actually not Alec Baldwin's fault. He is obviously the biggest name in this, but by all accounts, he was legitimately did not have any idea that there was a live round in this gun that was supposed to be a prop. And he was really practicing, as he should, saying, hey, get the lighting right. I'm going to draw my gun like this and boom, 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 right? The fact that he says he did not pull the trigger, I feel like is an absolute lie that he probably said in the aftermath. And now he's just kind of got to like die on a sword and like continue with that lie. But it seems very strange. And I think even the FBI like examined the gun and everyone kind of said, look, there's no way a gun can go off, even a prop gun, without pulling the trigger. He must have pulled the trigger. He had no idea that there was a bullet, much less a live bullet in the gun, but like he was just practicing a scene and he should have just kind of like said that. So there's a dispute as to whether or not he pulled the trigger. He says he did not. Everyone else is saying that just seems impossible. The live round comes from a few things. Now I learned a lot about this because actually, if you think about all the different shows we watch, there's a lot of guns, right?
Yeah.
And not a lot of safety issues. So most times the guns are just like what we call like a cap gun, right? They just kind of like make a sound. And that's called, I don't know, there's a word for that, right? So that's what either nothing should have been in the gun or like a cold round should have been in the gun. And even the director, or is actually, I think the assistant director, announced, like when you give the actor the gun, you announce like, hey, the guy's got a gun. It's a cold round. Like you're supposed to announce it to everyone on the set so that everyone kind of knows what you're dealing with, right? So apparently they announced it. So Alec Baldwin should be off the hook because they announced, you know, handing the gun, it's a cold round. Everyone kind of thought it was just a cap. You still probably shouldn't discharge a cap directly in front of someone, but neither here nor there. That's what happened. The confusion is how a live round got into the gun in the first place. And that's where there's a lot of lawsuits back and forth. And it's really impossible to tell what is true and who is lying and who is not lying, or at least from what I read. Maybe if you're following the trial every day. There's a person who's responsible for props. And then there's a second person called an armorer who's responsible for like weapons props, right? So apparently this armorer has, again, depending upon what you believe, a not great reputation of like kind of not being very detail oriented. And they either kind of negligently mixed in a box of bullets, live bullets and non-live bullets, or there was a box of live bullets and a box of non-live bullets, and someone took one from the wrong box and loaded the gun. And apparently the confusion comes from there was some type of like small protest by the cast earlier in the morning, and production kind of like stopped for, I don't know how long, a while, right? And they're saying, hey, it's not fair. Like, we're driving like an hour to and from the set. We should have hotels like closer to the set, right? So they kind of like walked off for an hour. And apparently during that 1 hour, and again, it's he said, she said, some of the cast said, look, we've got a bunch of time to like kill. Let's just take these guns and let's just kind of like shoot at like cans, right? So allegedly some of the people put in live bullets. I still don't know why they would have live bullets on a set, but they were like actually shooting at cans. And then apparently the problem was, I don't think anyone's arguing it was intentional, but either there was negligence by people unloading the guns and putting the live rounds into the cold round box, or people not unloading the gun. It's, again, a lot of people have different opinions, but for one reason or another, there was a live bullet in the gun. Alec Baldwin didn't know it. And when he was kind of practicing and showing people how he was going to draw his gun and shoot the bad guy in front of him or the good guy in front of him, who knows, it went off and struck this lady directly in the chest.
God.
Yeah. The whole situation is just absolutely awful, right? So I think already 2 people have pleaded guilty. One went to jail for like 18 months. I think the armorer went to jail for 18 months. I think the first director, who actually has like the responsibility to like look at the gun, kind of like admitted like, well, I mean, I guess I didn't like really look at it, or he didn't really test the round. I think he pleaded guilty to like some type of misdemeanor and got like 6 months probation. And now, but the big one is Alec Baldwin, because he's a person who held and discharged the firearm.
Yeah.
So just like you mentioned with Baby Reindeer, when there's a lawsuit, I think Rust has been a very, very prominent case for a long time, right?
Yeah, exactly. So this morning, again, as of the time of this recording, the case was dismissed with prejudice because apparently the prosecutors withheld evidence from the defense, or they didn't withhold it per se, but like they did some legal mumbo jumbo to hide the evidence.
Yeah, you're right. Apparently there's like, from the crime scene, there was like the bag of bullets.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a bag or explicitly, but and yes, the prosecutors didn't let Alec Baldwin's defense lawyers kind of like examine those bullets. I think the hardest part is someone absolutely died and something wrong happened. And now there's just so much confusion and chaos in terms of, who did what or who said what.
Yeah.
It seems hard to kind of sort out what's true and not true.
Yeah.
As you would probably expect in a chaotic scene like that, it would probably be easy for someone to either unload the gun or misplace the gun or, switch boxes or labels or something. And that seems to be kind of what happened. And now it's very difficult for everyone to kind of sort out who did what when, right?
So stupid. Honestly, it's such a dumb
Horrible.
thing. Why have live rounds anywhere nearby?
Yeah. I mean, it's actually created like, I think it takes a tragedy to kind of like rethink these things, right? But now I think it's caused like the whole industry to kind of like rethink safety, which never should have been an issue. But I agree. It's just crazy to me that there would ever be a live bullet, right? But apparently there's fake guns that shoot fake bullets, and then there's real guns that shoot fake bullets. And this was apparently a real gun
that shot a real bullet.
Yeah, but it was supposed to be fake bullets. But again, I would think that you should only have kind of fake guns on set, and make sure that they don't even have the firing pin or whatever it takes to fire a real bullet.
Yeah, exactly.
But you and I mean, to be honest, we take a lot of this for granted, right? Because we want especially in like action movies. To be fair, there is nothing worse than when you see someone kind of like holding a pistol and you're like, my God, that just looks like so fake. A gun is heavy, right? Like when you hold something that's real and heavy, you treat it differently than something that's just kind of like plastic and like light as
a wooden
air,
prop.
you know? Yeah. So sometimes, I mean, we've seen movies where someone's just kind of like flinging the pistol around, like, dude, come on, like.
Yeah, that's like a 3-kilogram piece of lead in your hand.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like
it's not like this thing that you can just fling
and
around.
The guy's just like holding it like, you know, like nothing. Like you can kind of tell it's not right. All right.
Anyway.
That's that. That's Baby Reindeer with a side of Rust.
Yeah, it's a mooch. If you get into that rabbit hole, I can see why you would want to continue watching it.
Yeah.
It's also a mooch because it made so many news headlines. It's kind of like a part of the cultural zeitgeist. If you don't have Netflix, you probably want to at least watch a few episodes to get an idea of whether it's your bag or not.
Yeah.
All those little things add up to a pretty solid mooch.
Let me ask you this. I know what the answer is, but I just want to hear you say it. If you're Netflix and you get sued for $170 million, is there a small piece of you that's like, yeah, free publicity?
100%.
I mean, like, if you and I get sued for $170 million, our life is bad and stressful for a long time, right?
Yeah.
If you're Netflix, you're like, look, this is bad. We're not saying we want to be sued, but it's not 170 million bad. It's kind of like 50 million bad. We'll consider 120 free publicity and more like good stuff, but the delta is only like, it's only 50 million bad for us, really.
Yeah, and that's if they pay out. On the other hand, I would go the other way and say that's probably like $100 million good, because that's how much money we would have to spend on advertising Netflix. Yeah. Guess what? Newspapers in India are picking this up. We don't have to pay for that. That's, 1.4 billion people who now have Netflix sued on their thing for being too accurate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this is a good thing in all other things. So I'm not a lawyer, but there's enough legal mumbo jumbo. And just by saying some things are fictionalized in here, I think there's enough leeway that they would probably, this poor woman has no leg to stand. And I do say poor woman because, again, no judgment on or no comment about whether she is guilty or not, but poor woman in the sense that she was living a quiet life, and then a bunch of internet random strangers figured out that she was the woman, and then basically doxed her.
Yikes. Okay. So, Pete, successful streamer skip. What is on the agenda for next week?
So, for next week, you are going back to Apple TV.
Ooh.
You're watching a show called Manhunt.
Lincoln.
Oh, is this the Lincoln biopic?
It's about Lincoln, yes.
So it must be about John Wilkes Booth, right?
I guess so, yeah.
And I am on Netflix again, and I'll be watching a show called The Brother's Son.
Don't know what this is about.
Neither do I.
I chose this for you?
Oh. Apparently.
Okay.
But it's got Michelle Yeoh in it, so I'm in.
All right. Time for me to update your list, I think.
Yeah, both of us need to do that. Actually, you raised a good point. Everyone out there, if you're listening, and not if, because you're listening, reach out to us, tweet at us at FNS Podcast, DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast. Leave a comment below, subscribe to our channel, like this video. Tell us what other shows you want us to put on stream or skip. We're down to just like 5 or 6 shows each.
We're down.
So we need more recommendations, guys.
Indeed we do. That means this episode of Stream or Skip has wound to a conclusion. We will be back next week. Let's see how it goes with Manhunt. Let's see how it goes with The Brother's Son.
Indeed. Thanks, Ethan.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of the Films and Stuff podcast. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.